Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Claudine Russell, the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anybody else be recording the proceedings? I look to Councillor McCann.
I reserve my right.
Perfect. If the fire alarm sounds, please remain seated. Members of Democratic Services will assess the situation and give you further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. So our first order of business is Overview and Scrutiny acting as the Crime and Disorder Committee. So that's the agenda that we'll be commencing first. And that moves us to item number 1, which is apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Houlihan and Oliver. Councillor Parfitt is on her way. She'll just be a little bit late. Item number 2, I can't see any substitute members for the usual members of the committee. And item number 3, we have one urgent item, which is on item 12, the role of poverty and crime, the DWP briefing note. We had this provided to the committee on Monday by the DWP, and we got some paper copies available for you today. Is that accepted that we'll be taking that under item 12, that urgent update? Thank you. Item 4, visiting members. I can see a couple of members in the public gallery, so if you'd like to come forward and state which item you'd like to speak on.
Good evening, Councillor Burke for item 13.
Thank you very much. The others are cabinet members, just to help us out with the later items for the next meeting. Lovely, thank you. Item 5, are there any disclosures by members or officers? Can't see anybody indicating. And item 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Again, can't see anybody indicating. So item 7, I move that all items be taken in public. Is that agreed? Thank you. And that takes us to item 8, which is the minutes from the last Crime and Disorder Committee meeting, which was held on the 8th of April this year. Those meeting minutes are on pages 1 to 5 of this agenda pack. Has anyone got any comments on those? Can't see anybody indicating. So I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of April 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 9, we haven't got any petitions this evening. And item 10, we haven't got any questions from local residents. And item 11, we haven't got any questions from members. Just before I move on to the introduction of item 12, welcome Councillor Parfitt. Have you got any disclosures or any disclosures of lobbying?
I have not.
Thank you very much. So that takes us to item 12, which is the neighbourhood policing and tackling antisocial behaviour. Verbal update. Oh no. Sorry, the urgent item update. So with this arrived because myself and the Vice Chairman, Councillor Oliver, we'd asked the Safer Maidstone Partnership, Martin Jeans, to provide us some information on how the role of poverty interacts with crime in Maidstone. We did ask the DWP if they'd be able to attend this evening's meeting, but unfortunately they declined. They have, however, provided us with a briefing note for us to consider. So the items for noting, but our Safer Stronger Communities Manager, Martin Jeans, will help us introduce this and will be available if we've got any questions. Over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, members. Yes, as provided, a briefing note that summarises the offer made by the Department of Works and Pensions in supporting people in regards to tackling poverty within the borough. Poverty is a worldwide and nationally known as one of the drivers of crime. So rather than focus our energy on proving that is still the case, the update you've been provided with is just a summary of some of the work that's undertaken, particularly to help those that are vulnerable and are in more deprived areas. So, but as I say, DW are unfortunately unable to attend, but if anybody has any questions, I'll try and answer them, or I can take those back and get my colleague to provide responses.
Anybody got any comments? I mean, I think Martin would be happy if we emailed to him anyway, so please do feel free to do that. I can't see anybody indicating, so we'll probably just drop you an email if that's all right, Martin. Thank you. And that takes us on to our neighbourhood policing update, and that will be introduced tonight by Chief Inspector Stuart Paul. Welcome. I think it's the first time we've seen you at this committee. Very welcome and thank you for coming. And Inspector Steve Kent, who we've seen on a number of occasions. You'll be presenting your verbal update on your neighbourhood policing and tackling antisocial behaviour. So over to you guys.
Good evening, Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for inviting us along this evening. As you've already alluded to, we're going to give you a bit of a presentation in relation to some of the work that our Community Safety Unit is doing here in Maidstone. I'd like to think you'd agree that it's some exceptional work that's been going on in relation to address ASB and other criminality within the Maidstone district. So I know that my colleague Steve here has got a presentation, so hopefully you can get that up on the screen at the moment, Martin, and then we will take you through that, and then we're happy to accept any questions following the briefing. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for inviting us. So this evening, we're going to give you a quick overview around what we've been doing in Maidstone in regards to tackling antisocial behaviour, retail crime and violence against women and girls. You know, I think the point that I need to highlight straight away is obviously this is partnership work. Whilst police do play a vital role in this, we can't do it alone. So I'm grateful for all the partners that have been supporting us. So first slide, please, Martin. Thank you. That might be a bit small for you to read. Apologies, quite a lot of information there. I shall read it out. So antisocial behaviour for the financial year in Maidstone is up this year by 119 calls in comparison to 2024. So that's plus 5.6%. And rolling year, this equates to 2.5% increase. The ASB call types that have increased are reports of illegal parking, discarded rubbish, which includes drug paraphernalia, and neighbourhood disputes. Reductions have been seen in nuisance motor vehicles on the road, riding on a land other than a road, and dog bites. So for this financial year, and I think it's important that I compare apples with apples here, we are the second best performing district in the county of Kent and the third best district across the rolling year. Given the geographical size and population of Maidstone, this is a very strong achievement. Other districts, I can say, have seen significant increases. So from an operational policing perspective, we've achieved this by utilising our beat officers, neighbourhood task forces and child centre policing team. They have been out there in the community recognising and actively targeting problems, and these are the problems that you and your communities have raised to us. We work with other agencies across the district and force-wide, I've made a point of raising sustainable operations to tackle these issues so that once we've got on top of it, we can try and keep on top of it. Easier said than done. So some of our ongoing ASB operations include an operation called Op Deplete. You may have heard this before. This is us tackling off-road motorcycles. Op Innovate, tackling rural crime with the Rural Task Force, including antisocial behaviour. Op Assist, working with Maidstone Borough Council Waste Crime Team. Op Eureka, this is an operation raised by special constables and they tackle antisocial behaviour vehicles in the town centre specifically. Op Scarab, this is tackling catapult crime and there is also a force-wide operation that we hang that onto. Op Meeting, this is tackling street racing across the district and notably other areas and forces have suffered significantly with this. And lastly, one of the main operations to do is Op Pilot, which is tackling ASB within licensed premises or from licensed premises and that's working with the licensing team. I've put a little graph on there, which is probably going to be difficult to see on the TV, but essentially it's reported ASB since 2020. So far left is 2019. Far left is 2019, the spike of 2020, COVID, and obviously the dip. And then on the right-hand side, we haven't got the 2025 figures yet. So the right-hand side is 2024. So as I said right at the start of this slide, we are 119 calls or plus 5.56% up on that right-hand side, which still puts us in a relatively good position in comparison to where we've been before. I contacted our Strategic Prevention Command team, and I'm pleased to report that the amount of CPWs, CPNs and CBOs that we have issued is far above what the rest of the force have delivered on a district level. So 95 CPWs, 28 CPNs following the issuing of a CPW and 4 CBOs. And the last bit of this slide, 185 e-scooters seized since November 24 and 35 e-bikes since December 24. I shall move on to the next slide. So I'm going to go to nuisance off-road bikes, particularly in Parkwood and Shepway, because it has been a cause for concern previously. I just want to highlight some of the work that we've been doing and some of the outcomes. So the way we tackle the problem is we must make sure that we record it properly. We use something called a proactive management plan. Okay, and essentially they are forward-thinking strategy plans to problem solve issues within the communities. They are recorded on police systems, so they are kept. It involves a scanning phase, so what is the actual problem, analysis, what the data tells us about that particular problem, a response phase, so using all of the information and what we're going to do about it, either as a police or multi-agency approach, and this is followed with an assessment post-response. So these issues can be a joint effort amongst partners or just police-led. And essentially, I think the important bit is to highlight, look, if the problem's not reduced or it didn't work effectively, then the plan goes back to the beginning. We review and set new actions and rerun the plan. So this isn't a case of saying, oh, it didn't work and we just give up. This is a case of maybe we didn't get it right the first time, maybe our tactics weren't right, but we will adapt. I've put the calls on there for the nuisance off-road bikes in Parkwood Shepway. These are the calls that have been made to us. So June 14 calls, July 23 calls, August 22 calls, September 15, October 14 and November 9. And that is relatively traditional to what I would expect, the peak being in July and August, clearly because of the summer holidays and the finer weather. So within these months, we have conducted daily high visibility patrolling in the area. That's by the beat officers, by the task force PCSOs, and also county resources, so traffic units, firearms units, etc. We've had beat officer and NBC CPT engagement with the community and shop staff to gather information. We purchased a digital SLR camera, so we've been using that to gather intelligence and images of people using these off-road bikes, and obviously using that as part of our evidence capture. We've done 6 full days of action and awards using all of CSU resources, county resources and partners, and obviously that is on top of all the daily work that we are also doing. And the result is this: we've issued 3 CPWs. Thankfully, we haven't had to issue any CPNs. That tells me that the CPWs have worked. We have seized 11 off-road bikes. And we've also seized 3 stolen bikes that were found following a warrant where 5 arrests were made. And actually, the people using those 3 stolen bikes, I know, had previously caused a significant amount of the ASB in Parkwood Shepway. And I know this through their description and the rider's description of the bikes, the images and the rider clothing. And all the vehicle seizures and the good work that we've done has been highlighted on My Community Voice. Next slide, please, Martin. Thank you. So this is what the data tells us. I just want to be transparent on this slide. This is district data, not just Parkwood Shepway, okay? So motor vehicle nuisance on a road, including noise. So for the financial year, we have seen a reduction of 24.7%, a rolling year reduction of 22.1%, and last month, I ran this data 2 days ago, we saw a reduction of 15.6%. Riding and driving a motor vehicle on land other than a road, Financial year reduction of 15.2%, rolling year reduction of 13.7%, and last month reduction of 10%. So as you can see, some really good results there. I'm going to come off of ASB now, and I know it's not within the agenda, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about retail crime and then about VOG, if that's okay. As we know, retail crime is a national issue, and it's not just, we know it's just not the impact of retail crime, it's the violence that's used, the harassment, the threats. So from a local perspective, this last year, we have been using the Cambridge Harm Index scoring system to identify shops and stores that are high harm locations. Essentially, the more volume of crimes at a particular shop, and the more violent it is. For example, if a security guard is pushed over, the more the score. So, for example, a shoplifting might get a score of 10, whereas an assault might get a scoring of 40. When you total them all up, you can identify where the issues are. So again, a bit like the antisocial behaviour, we use PMPs. We've currently got PMPs at those locations, so Co-op Harwich, Lenham, the Spar at Staplehurst, Co-op Shepway, Bearsted Shops, Tesco's Coxheath, the M&S store at Junction 7, and the next store at Junction 7, so quite a few there. We use a toolkit that my officers have built. It's called Op IBIS. I won't talk about too much into the tactics, but it's everything from using uniform patrols, plainclothes, CCTV, mobile CCTV, working with shop staff, shop managers, regional staff, regional security managers. So we're going from just tackling an offender through to looking at the bigger picture to try and assist the stores in reducing the crimes at their locations. Yeah, so it's a proactive management plan. It's if I go back to, that's all right, no problem. I shall go back to Martin. Could you go back 2 slides for me? I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. So it's that top paragraph there. Yes, no problem. Okay. So we use the various techniques to try and dissuade and prevent, reassure and detect shoplifters. And this can be someone who is genuinely in need of food, nappies, essentials, through to organised crime. So multitude of a range of people that we need to be able to cater for, as well as targeting those shops and those individuals. We do some educational inputs by the Child Centre Policing Team. They have been to every secondary school in Maidstone, and within assemblies do inputs on highlighting the impact of shoplifting on the businesses and the local communities. They also deploy to the town centre in school holidays to engage with the students. A lot of them they will know. We engage with businesses in the National Safer Business Action Week, and that's traditionally done with partners. And for those of you that come to the town centre quite a bit, we patrol with the street ambassadors and Martin's team in the town centre to do that joined up work around tackling retail crime. So some figures for you just to hang on to this. Recorded crime in Maidstone financial year, we have seen a reduction of 8% from 2024, rolling year reduction of 5.7% from 2024, and our solved retail crime for the financial year has seen an increase, so a good thing, of 8.9%, and a solved retail crime rolling year of 4.3%. So essentially we are having less crimes reported to us, and the ones that are being reported to us, we are seeing an increase in solving them, and that's a positive thing. I should move on to the next slide. That's the only slide I've got in regards to retail crime. And I just want to talk about, mindful of time, VOG, violence against women and girls. And I just want to highlight the underlined bit within that title, which is non-investigatory. So the stuff that we do that is not linked to an arrest, an investigation, a case file, a court hearing, or anything like that. So this is I suppose, the proactive work that we do within my department. So we do monthly child-centred policing team inputs to secondary schools across the district, educating students about gangs and exploitation. Online safety sessions delivered to primary school children. We do brothel visits, completing welfare checks to sex workers to provide safeguarding and signposting. We visit local hotels under Operation Make Safe, and that's to ensure that the hotel staff are aware of safeguarding principles for women and girls. We hold Coffee with a Cop events at Maidstone General Hospital to promote relationships and confidence in reporting crimes by NHS staff. Licensing checks at public houses, nightclub venues, and that's done by the beat officers, supported by the licensing officer. You're going to be aware of the Ask Angela campaign. We've purchased some business cards, which is distributed across the division for females within the nighttime economy. We have very regular engagements with the Youth Cafe Switch provision to promote safer spaces for girls. I've just given Switch Cafe some funding to purchase some sports equipment to attract some of the youth away from Vorg and ASB in the town centre. I've deployed, for those of you that have walked up Gabriel's Hill this evening, you'll have seen the CCTV trailer that Martin and I purchased together. That's currently in Gabriel's Hill and did a wonderful job in preventing and deterring not only Vorg offences, but ASB and issues on a Friday, Saturday night. Martin, can you, thank you. We do cookering visits. I'll just describe what that is. That's vulnerable people who are being potentially exploited to sell drugs. So those that are vulnerable in the community, you'll find that county lines will approach them, try and get them to sell drugs for benefit. And then, of course, they become more vulnerable. So we visit those people. High visibility patrolling along the River Medway to help deter any Vorg type offences. Child-centred policing team tackle or deal with students who are often sending indecent images of themselves, sexting, all those sorts of things. And we use workbooks to do that. So rather than criminalise, we use the workbooks to make them realise what they're doing and the potential impact of it. We support the Walk Safe app that's been launched by the Town Centre Task Force. We do night sweeps of Brenchley Gardens. Project Vigilant deployment. So this is a really good piece of work. This is a force-wide project. So this is plainclothes officers patrolling and looking out for any concerning or predatory behaviour, who are supported by uniformed officers. Moat Park, so across this summer, I actually raised Moat Park as a priority location for us. And essentially what that meant is I deployed more resources into the park, given the nature of the park, the amount of visitors and previously some of the issues that we've had there. That's been completed, and I'm pleased to report that we received high praise from the local community and users of the park. Fish Fest is a diversionary project which educates boys in undertaking Vorg, ASB and internet safety whilst also learning to fish. We've had 50 candidates go through that project, and the feedback from them, the ones that are actually doing the project, is excellent. That's reverberated by their parents or guardians. Crime Cloppers, another diversionary project, has had a successful year where 20 female candidates have received education around Vorg, personal safety and antisocial behaviour, an award-winning horse stables where we've used horse husbandry as a platform. There are a further 20 girls booked in for the project across 2026, and the Community Safety Unit have arrested 55 Vorg-related arrests over the course of 2025, which has supported our investigatory colleagues. This has generated significant intelligence and supported probation services recalling offenders back to prison. So some really good proactive, or I think some really good proactive work there. I'm just going to move on to these next. There's 5 slides, but I can whiz through them fairly quickly. I'm mindful of time. So child-centred policing team at Maidstone have come up with 5 interventions to help these children when it comes to protecting themselves from Vorg, and there is crossover with other offences such as ASB. So Move to Empower intervention will involve 10 to 15 young people participating in dance lesson, followed by reflective discussions, including violence against women and girls, healthy relationships, criminality and personal safety. That is going to be held at the Mandy Ellen School of Dance. The next one is Wheels of Change. So Wheels of Change is an intervention supported by and hosted at Switch Cafe, where young people help repair donated bikes. This initiative includes education around violence against women and girls, what acceptable behaviours are, to be confident in challenging others where appropriate, to break down barriers between young people and the police, and work towards a sense of achievement. They actually get to keep the bikes that they repair, which is really good. Acorn to Oak is a project. There's an intervention where child centre policing take young people to a farm in Sutton Valence during the half-term holidays. The aim is to educate the students in a comfortable environment to prevent them from becoming victims of violence against women and girls involved in ASB and put themselves in risky situations. All participants actively engage in farm work, learning life skills, spending time outdoors and experiencing activities they wouldn't normally have access to. And the idea behind this intervention is it breaks down barriers with young people, opens up conversations around positive role models and healthy relationships. Forest Time, a really good one this. So it was originally launched at the Harlequins Forest School following repeated incidents of young people trespassing and causing damage to buildings and their equipment. The young people were, through workbooks, identified and invited to repair the damage, and essentially Forest Time was born. So we've taken this forward and nominated candidates from different agencies across 2026 will have been involved in ASB for criminal activity and are of a young age will be invited to this project. They will be invited to build a tree house, carry out general improvements at the forest schools, and within that there'll be discussions around positive role models. It will be male participants only, so that our police staff can talk to them about healthy relationships, violence against women and girls, and such like. And then the last slide, this is a really good one. Custody, no thanks. So one of my PCSOs came up with this. It's a creative and immersive experience to educate young people about the realities of custody and the consequences of criminal behaviour. The experience involves bringing 10 to 15 young people through a simulated custody experience featuring actors portraying realistic scenarios. These will include an interview room, so the scenario being a female suspect arrested for joint enterprise, where her boyfriend has assaulted a member of the public and she's filmed the incident. This will prompt discussion around peer influence, accountability and joint enterprise laws. Custody desk, a male suspect is booked into custody for domestic assault. This scenario is used to open up conversations around VORG, toxic relationships and bystander behaviour. And finally, the holding cell, a suspect is brought in for a knife possession, and during a search, cannabis is discovered. This will lead into discussions around knife crime consequences and highlight campaigns such as Fearless and the Violence Reduction Unit. These three scenarios aim to educate participants on the custody process, legal implications and personal responsibility. So some really good interventions there by the Child Centre Policing team, and I think that the work that they're doing will have significant impact in the future of our young community. That's it from my presentation. Happy to take any questions on any of that.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. Before I open it up to the committee, I've got a visiting member, Councillor Burke, if you'd like to come and.
Thank you. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight as a councillor for Grove Green and Vinters Park Ward. I represent their concerns this evening. I wish to start with that I appreciate the efforts and your will to do your best in these challenging times, but what I say this evening is not based on crime statistics. It's based on direct conversations with residents, people who have lived here all their lives and others who live in my ward. Long-term residents tell me that over the past few years, Maidstone Town Centre has changed, for the worse. They no longer feel safe walking there, especially with their wives, partners, or children. In just the 6 years I have lived here, I have noticed a marked decline of how safe I feel. I understand that Kent Police allocate resources according to recorded data and intelligence. Residents, however, judge safety by what they see, what they hear, and most importantly, how they feel. These two measures are not currently aligned. One specific stretch is always mentioned over and over again in my conversations, and that is always the high street between KFC and Maidstone East Station. It's described as dark, unwelcoming, intimidating, particularly after dark in these winter months. I've walked it myself and felt the same heightened concern. We need more focused police attention and visible patrols. This would be immediately noticed and welcomed by the public. Preventing crime is more important than just dealing with it. I'm here tonight to tell you on behalf of the people I represent that the present level of neighbourhood policing and action against antisocial behaviour is not working for what they see, what they hear, and more importantly, how they feel. They want and need far greater visible police presence and more robust crime prevention. However, law-abiding citizens in my ward and across the borough deserve to feel safe and happy in their county town again. If we do not act decisively now, I genuinely worry about what Maidstone will look in the years to come. Please give proper weight to residents' lived experience and their feelings of fear. Data must not be the only guide. More officers on the ground, more regular patrols, and quicker, firmer action are urgently required in prevention. I hope the committee and Kent Police will treat this as a serious call for change, not driven solely on statistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burke. I don't know if you've got anything to pick up on that, Inspector Kent, and then I'll go to the committee for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Acknowledge what's been said, and I sort of pair that with the input that I've given already. I think we deliver an excellent service here in Maidstone, and I know that we've made a significant difference for the 5 years that I've been here. In the town centre specifically, I have a beat team. It's a sergeant and 10 PCs. They work shifts, and they do an outstanding job. In my opinion, they work with all of the partners, Martin's team, and the street ambassadors, street pastors, and many other of the stakeholders within the town. I note the comments around listening to the community. I'm pleased to inform you that our My Community Voice will be pairing up with Single Online Home as of January, and essentially through that platform, if you log into My Community Voice, there's an opportunity every 3 months to do an online survey. It's open to all residents. They are able to tell us through a drop-down menus and also an ability to write a context box, if you like, commentary box, what their particular issues are, so they can write antisocial behaviour, and then below it exactly what, where, when, how. That information will then be collated, given to me, which will then disseminate to the beat sergeant, the beat officers, and then we will take action using that data and then feedback through My Community Voice, the work that we've done. So we are listening to the community.
Thank you very much. I just didn't catch My Community Voice is working with, I didn't catch that second one, sorry.
It's called Single Online Home.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Parfitt, Councillor Cook and Councillor Mackay registered to speak, so over to Councillor Parfitt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do apologise, but I have got a number of points, but I do wish to make them all. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to Inspector Kent, because I have worked with you for a long time, and you have always been incredibly helpful. And I don't think it is coincidence that your time with Kent Police and in the Maidstone area goes a long way to some of the really positive things that we have seen on the slides tonight. That's not to dismiss anything Councillor Burke says, because I think, you know, when alarm bells are raised, we should always listen. But I have had a very positive experience. And I also just want to say, listening to the presentation, I was thinking, gosh, I wish we talked about this more often. I wish this committee met more often, because there is so much meat here that could be unpicked, and you know, yet we're effectively given a little 15-minute slot every so often, and I think it's really important. That's just my view. Right, I'll just move on to some other things. Catapult, I think what's noticeable about that is that it nationally, that is being raised as an issue, and I think that is really positive, and anything that we can do on the ground to support that would be brilliant. Shops, I found that really interesting, because those are not the shops that I would have instantly thought would be problematic, mainly because I go into them quite a lot and they're always, you know, so I found that interesting. And the other thing I just wanted, it was really useful to find out about Fish Fest, because when I was actually a county councillor, this was one of the projects that I donated my community grant to. So to actually hear that 50 people have benefited from that, well, I'm just really happy, because I know I've done some good somewhere. The violence against women and girls, I know that's another topic, but, and this is something negative I'm going to say, I'm afraid, what strikes me about everything that we talk about violence against women and girls, the onus is on the girls and the women. It's about safe spaces for women. It's about what women have got to do. It's like you giving money, and I'm not saying that these are bad initiatives, but, and I hate to say this, most of the violence against women and girls is perpetrated by men, and that is just where it doesn't seem to be focused. Now, I don't have the answer, but I just wanted to raise that as something that I find frustrating, is that it's us as women that having to modify our behaviour. Fish Fest, catapults. Oh, and I've said about the committee being useful. And will the slides be available? Are you allowed to make those available to us? And also, I want to say thank you to Martin, because Martin has worked really well with Steve for a long time, and has always been brilliant whenever I message him with problems. And the thing that I just would like to ask you, this is a direct question. I have noticed an increase in the amount of, and I'll just call it what it is, cannabis, weed, smell of it. I mean, I ran down here like the clappers because I was late, and I was literally hit with a wall of cannabis from the top of Gabriel's Hill. I notice it in Marden, you know, I notice it in Harrietsham. You know, this is a real problem. I don't know how you tackle it. I don't, and there wasn't a lot of emphasis on that, but that is something that I see as being problematic and increasing. I'll shut up now. Thank you. Yes, please, Inspector Kent.
Thank you. So I'll just answer that last question. I've also noticed the same thing. So cannabis is more prevalent. I think it could be down to many things. One of the things could be the price of alcohol is shot up, and it's very expensive to go out now, and it's cheaper to sit in your house and smoke a joint. NOS canisters are now illegal and harder to get hold of, so it might be that people are turning to using cannabis. On a positive note, this last year, 2025, I have never signed up so many warrants for my officers to go and take out cannabis grows. I've lost count of how many we've got. So yes, it is an issue. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I am looking to tackle it through issuing the warrants. And the fact that we've now got the beat officers in each ward and cluster will help that, because they should be able to intelligence gather on a greater basis.
Thank you.
That moves us on to Councillor Cook next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll just add my own thanks to police and Martin for the work that you've done. Some of the areas I've represented, both as a county councillor and as a borough councillor, we've had some startling successes. One of the things that didn't come up in the presentation is the number of visitors to Maidstone that cause trouble. and are getting on trains, getting off trains, and then causing trouble in Maidstone. And I'm just wondering where we are on that, and the link between yourself and presumably the British Transport Police in terms of identifying people before they get here or before hours go somewhere else. The issue of catapults is a big one. Somebody's going to get very seriously hurt. They are being aimed at animals. They're being aimed at domestic pets, it's, you know, I'd just like to get some sense of how we're addressing that, please, Steve, if you could. I'm not going to go beyond that because I think Lottie's mentioned enough, and the presentation was excellent. So, but where do you think 25 is going to be? Because that antisocial behaviour thing was tilting back up again in 24. Is it going to peak again and then come back down, or is it going to continue going up?
I hope so, with all the work that I've been doing and my officers have been doing. So, like I say, we've been working really hard at getting that down. I'll go back to slide 1 on the presentation. In comparison to the other districts, we're smashing it. It's the easiest way to describe it. We're doing very well. I'm really pleased, and it is because I am ensuring that my officers are spending as much time as they can out of the office, not doing paperwork. There are costs to that, you know, but and that's what I have to battle with Mr. Paul for every morning. But you know, getting out there is the most important. But that's what, you know, operational policing, uniform policing, that's what we should be doing. In regards to the trains, BTP are taking the lead on that, as you would expect. They're doing a lot of work. We do work with them. They do reach out to us quite a bit to assist them. We've worked on operations at Maidstone East and also out towards Staplehurst. I can't remember between the two train lines. They were really positive about us assisting them. A lot of the perception is that drugs are being brought in by black people from London. That is not the case. Usually it's white people from Maidstone. It's local communities that are using the train to bring it back in. I just want to put that out there. That's you know, intelligence led and fact rather than perception. So yeah, we're doing quite a bit there. And catapults, I'd urge you all to have a look at the government petition that's currently ongoing. It's open until April. I checked before I left the office this evening. 35,000 votes. It needs 100,000. South East is doing quite well in regards to the voting when you look at the heat map, but simply we need more, because the issue I have is they're not illegal. I've got the Ways and Means Act that I can use to get some of these catapults off, and I'm using the force-wide policy plan and using all sorts of legislation under the Badger Act and Mammals Act and Wildlife Act and Prevention Act and all these sorts of things. They're all summary only, or most of them are summary only offences, so non-arrestable. And the issue with a lot of the legislation is you've got to find them doing it. So just having a catapult in their pocket is not an offence. Having metal ball bearings in their pocket is not an offence. Having them together is not an offence. So you've actually got to catch them doing it, which has caused me problems. We're starting to win, and I'm looking at projects that are ongoing across or nationally, because it is a national problem, as to what people are doing to try, what police are doing to try and tackle this problem. And if there's one that seems to be having a bit of a win, then I'll be looking to adopt it.
Thank you. Would it be possible that you ping the link to the petition out, or Martin can send it to all of us? Because I think that's something we could definitely do to help push it out for all our socials. And Councillor Mackay, over to you. Sorry, Martin, I didn't see you.
No, it's okay. It's only just to add to what Steve was saying. Sorry, Inspector Kent was saying. On the issue of catapults. Obviously the catapults that are being used are quite advanced and they're quite expensive. So a lot of work's done around educating parents because these aren't readily available. They have to be ordered online, or you can't just walk into a shop and buy one. So there's a mechanism of the children getting hold of them. So that's something we're working on as well. Some of the young people that have been identified in engaging in the activity of deliberately targeting animals. There's social media groups within Snapchat and Instagram where they post pictures of trophies, for want of a better way of describing it. Some of those young people involved in that were identified and put through Fish Fest. So that's one of the reasons that that's used as a specific mechanism. On the subject of antisocial behaviour or the links with trains, one of the other things that we've worked on, because we've been so successful in reducing some of the ASB around the top end of Week Street, around the McDonald's and KFC area, although granted not perfect, Switch changed their outreach model to actually start going onto trains and engaging with young people coming in and out of the town rather than waiting for them to arrive. So, and they wouldn't have been able to do that had we not significantly reduced some of the issues we were facing.
Thank you for that added clarification. That's really helpful. Councillor Mackay.
Inspector Kent, thank you very much for this. You know, most of the time we come to council meetings, we listen to doom and gloom. Now, I hope you can circulate your slides to all councillors and councillors can share the good news. Unfortunately, people much prefer to spread bad news or believe bad news. I was talking to someone recently and they were convinced that if they went into Maidstone Town Centre, they'd be stabbed or they would come to some physical harm. And somehow, you know, here we all are. We're all bang in the centre of Maidstone Town Centre. But we managed to get here without injury, didn't we? Touch wood, my colleague here says, you know. And unfortunately, good news is not spread as well as bad news. So I congratulate you and your team on the work you've been doing. And I just hope we find one day a way of spreading good news which is accepted by the majority of people. We will not be believed by particularly the older generation in the main who prefer to live in fear. And on a lighter note, am I right in saying that part of your, did I say that violence, crime has tended to go down, is on the wane? Yeah. I just wonder whether that is associated with the rising cost of alcohol and the ready supply of cannabis. I wonder whether the two are connected. But we will never know that, and if it was, it would never be admitted by authorities, I suspect. Thank you very much for the work your team is doing, and I hope somehow we can get the good news out.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Wilkinson, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding nuisance vehicles, it's good to see the amount of work, extensive amount of work you've done on that, and it's reflected in the fact that last couple of years I was constantly being contacted about nuisance vehicles, and I haven't been contacted at all this year. So that's really great. Thank you so much. Regarding the impressive, extensive work you've done on the VORG, it would be really good to see the stats for that, you know, for if sexual assault figures have gone down. It would be really good to see that, or if that's cutting through. Just a quick one about lighting, because it says in planning, lighting for future planning, prioritising well-lit short walking routes. But what about the routes that are already currently not, that we've got already? Because I mean, when I walk home, I'm walking home in very dim lighting, and sometimes no lighting at all. And I think that needs to be looked at. I know that's KCC, but whether there's talks with KCC about the lighting situation. Thank you. Thanks for your work. Cheers.
Thank you. Actually, the point that I'd written down, which I'll say now because it leads on from Councillor Wilkinson's, was that as an authority, we're starting a brand new local plan process. And I just wondered whether some of your things to do with lighting and stuff like that, how we capture that. Maybe Martin could have a conversation with spatial planning so that if we're designing places in the future and some of the ones that we've currently got, like Councillor Wilkinson said, whether we can do good design to help to, you know, eliminate some of these crime issues going forwards. That'd be really good if we could get your input on that, I'm sure. I've got Councillor Harper next.
I just wanted to reiterate what Malcolm said. You know, there's a lot of good news here. I think especially as you were saying, compared to other areas of Kent and the South East, we seem to be bucking the trend, which is, you know, very good. And I think one of the problems, as we all know, is perception. You know, people have perception that places aren't safe, which isn't necessarily reality. And I think, as Malcolm was saying, if we could actually solve that, then, you know, thousands of people in our borough, millions across the country, probably feel a lot happier than they do. But perhaps if we can work with our comms team, chair, to get out the information we've had today, you know, hopefully the press would take some of it up. But our comms, you know, we know we've got quite a good distribution network ourselves, because I just think we can get over some of the perceptions, we can start to win things. And one of which I think actually is around the town centre. And I think it's perception. It's partly, we've seen over the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of, for instance, office blocks being converted into bed-sits, and then people being moved into Maidstone from London. Frequently, they don't have a job when they come here. They don't have any social networks and so on, and they're living in a one-room accommodation. So I think what the reality is, there's probably more people out and around because they don't have any space to live in. But, you know, they're not criminals. They're just ordinary poor people, unfortunately, who've been moved to Maidstone. And I wonder if some of the perception about the town is linked to that. You know, completely unfair on those people, but, you know, it's an inevitability when you see the conversion of office blocks and so on. On the catapults, we've got a particular problem in one part of Fant where it's not necessarily aimed at animals, it's aimed at people. And it's aimed at breaking and intimidating some of the residents in the lower Fant Road, upper Fant Road area. I'm sure you would be made aware by residents, but, you know, it's quite a serious issue which has been going on for a while. But I know it's a whole issue about catching people and having the evidence, because people would be able to tell you pretty well who's doing it, but it's evidence which you need. So I'd say I just think there's a lot of real positives, and we just need to work out how we get that out to try to burst the bubble of perception of crime getting worse, when the reality is, and I've sat on this committee and the previous committees like this for quite a few years and had reports from yourselves demonstrating year on year a lot of the issues around crime are going down despite people's perception that they're not. And that is a big issue, and to some extent, possibly some of the people who contacted Councillor Burke from his ward, it is perception. And if we can break that, then we can make everybody's life a lot happier.
Thank you. Okay, over to Councillor Field next.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of observations, really. I think the first thing I'd like to say is how much of what you presented is outside of what general public would normally expect to be policing. And I think that's where we are with policing now, but it's to be commended that you've taken that on. Things like the initiatives with child-centred policing are highly commendable. And I absolutely take on board Councillor Parfitt's comments about violence against women and girls, but I also believe that every pebble you throw into a pond has a lot of ripples. And if you've got 50 lads going through the fishing initiative and however many young people going through the bicycle initiative, they're talking to their friends about those things. So just to really sort of commend you and your colleagues for that work and thank you for it, because I think it's highly valuable. And anything that we can do as elected representatives to promote that, and also to ensure that local government money bolsters the efforts of what you're doing in policing in that space, please do, through your cup of tea conversations perhaps with Martin and colleagues, let us know, because I think it's very important and very laudable. I did have an area that I wanted to ask about, which is around e-bikes and scooters. And I can only really come at this as someone like Councillor Burke in town centre kind of ward. Anecdotally, it seems to me that there's a difference in the cohort predominantly using e-bikes from the cohort predominantly using e-scooters. And I wonder if you could inform me and colleagues as to whether there is. The other thing that concerns me is my perception that you're being made to police this with a hand tied behind your back, because there does seem in this country to be a discrepancy between what the public might reasonably expect in terms of things like the legality of e-scooters and the position. And again, I'd be interested in your thoughts on sort of the policing work you do, whether that perception holds up. And if it does, then I think to colleagues, maybe there's more we need to do about, through the LGA, through our own cabinet perhaps, lobbying the relevant government departments about what I perceive to be a bit of a grey area that looks very hard to police, potentially quite dangerous from a public safety point of view. I know that we've had a fatality, for example, in Coxheath that I can think of off the top of my head, related to the use of these sorts of devices. So thank you again, and I welcome any comments.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I'm not sure I can differentiate between the scooters and the e-bikes specifically. You tend to find that the younger members of the community tend to use the e-scooters. My officers have become experts in e-scooters and e-bikes. I've got a couple particularly that are interested in them. It's all about the amount of electricity they punt out and the fact that you need insurance and all those bits and bobs. So there is a technical aspect to it. I take a quite straight approach, and it has gained quite a few complaints that my sergeants had to deal with. In short, they're illegal and they can be dangerous. And the law says you need insurance to use them. You can't get insurance, and therefore I'm taking it from you. It's as simple as that. There are some genuine people out there that have purchased them as a green option to travel, and I admire that. But if you're buying one that is over a certain amount of kilowatts per hour, they're illegal and they get taken. Unfortunately, I have to take quite a strict line on that. Otherwise, I'll potentially be seen as giving favour. There are some that are e-bikes that are legal. And essentially, we ask the riders of those e-bikes to voluntarily allow us to tag them. We have a little blue tag that we put on the handlebars, for example, because essentially it stops us from stopping them every time we see that bike, because obviously they're wearing different clothing on any given day. So I don't necessarily have an issue with it. I'm going by the letter of the law, because I think that's the only way I can honestly police the issue. I'd be very confident in telling you that we have got the highest amount of seizures across the county. I don't actually know that, but they are some awesome figures. 185 e-scooters and 35 e-bikes. The complaints that I get are from parents, usually, of the riders. My little Johnny's lost his e-scooter. It's been seized by police. How do I get it back? You can't. It is illegal. We have recently sent out or Kent Police has sent out a campaign saying, please don't buy your child an e-scooter or an e-bike over such and such kilowatts per hour for Christmas, because we'll have it off of you. It's as simple as that. So, yeah, the only clear way to do it is by sticking to the law. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. I think my question now is more to colleagues on the council. I really do think, and this is kind of what I was teasing out, I think the problem is not your policing. I think the problem is the law, in that it is vague. And that's why very interesting to me that you say that your top complaints are, little Billy's had his Christmas present taken away, essentially, or whatever. And I'm sure you'll probably in the new year have a whole new barrel load of those. I wonder, Chair, if we should be writing to the relevant department to highlight this issue, because this is a failure in central government and legislation. I think it's very confusing that in certain parts of the country, like central London, Cambridge, and so on and so forth, they're renting out scooters, and we're sending out the message that they're green, they're an alternative to cars, and so on and so forth, whilst at the same time, you need to look up quite complicated rules to understand how many kilowatts it's allowed to have as a battery, and so on and so forth. So I think, and that was kind of what I was driving with, not to try and put you in a trick question situation, that we've got a gap between what a reasonable member of the public would expect you to be policing and what you are actually policing, which I don't believe falls into the community policing space. As I say, I think it falls into our remit as elected representatives to perhaps take the opportunity to highlight that there's a gap here. So, Chair, I'd welcome your views on that.
I was just checking where we are procedurally with that. This is a verbal update for noting for this committee. So the way forward with that would be to speak to the Cabinet and see if they'd be minded to take that forward, and the leader write to them. We don't have any mechanism for doing it through this because it's just an update for noting.
I mean, the suggestion is noting, but we can always, as a sitting committee of the council, we can ask officers to take a recommendation. We don't have to simply note, can we, surely?
Afraid not. We're a Cabinet-led council, so we need to go that way.
We'll find a way.
That we will, Councillor Field. And that takes us to Councillor Higston, please.
Thank you very much. Two things, really. First thing is, I agree with Councillor Harper and Councillor Mackay that it is about perception in terms of crime. And obviously, if you read the Mail online, you're going to have a very different perception about what the crime stats really are in this country. And it's not just Maidstone, I think it's sort of countrywide as well. So it's kind of the national media, and in particular, the right-wing press that we're kind of fighting a battle against here. The second point, I just want some clarification about the catapults, because on the website, I looked into this, and on Kent Police's website, it says that you're already confiscating catapults from people where you believe that they're going to be used in a crime. So therefore, I'm not sure that we do need primary legislation. I've looked at the petition, and my concern with that petition is it puts the onus on the individual to prove that they're not doing something wrong, which actually goes against the principle of law in this country of innocent until proven guilty. I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we are seizing catapults under legislation. But as I said, you've got to find them committing it. The legislation is very, very, very broad and very old. Or majority of it is also very old. So Kent Police website is technically correct. We are seizing catapults using legislation. But from my experience, the majority of the time that the officers are facing a situation with a catapult, it's not in one of those, i.e., a youth with a catapult loaded with a metal ball bearing, aiming it up at a tree. It's we've stopped a child and they've got a catapult in their pocket that we've asked them to turn their pockets out. They've got it on them, but they're not using it. It's in their bag. Where we go to schools, and with the permission of the schools, we search children's bags under their policy, and we find catapults. Again, we've got no powers of seizure, but the school do. And 7 days later, the schools give it to us, and we destroy it. So we are doing it, but the majority of the time, it's not in the circumstances that leans towards us seizing the catapult under the various bits of legislation. So Ways and Means Act I'm using essentially.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of this item. Thank you ever so much for coming this evening and taking us, the committee, through that. It was really great. So I'm going to let Chief Inspector Paul and Inspector Kent go. You're more than welcome to stay, but you're more than welcome to leave as well. And thank you again. And the committee will be moving on now to item 14, which is the comprehensive strategy for reducing violence against women and girls, pages 6 to 12 of your agenda packs. And this report will be introduced by the Safer Stronger Communities Manager, Martin Jeans. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very pleased to present the update from our ongoing work to prevent and address violence against women and girls. The report follows on from the actions agreed by Cabinet in December 2024 and the initial update that we provided at your last crime disorder meeting in April. Our focus remains the delivery of meaningful change through partnership, policy and community engagement. Since April, we have advanced in several areas. Licensing Committee are actively lobbying for national regulatory changes to improve taxi safety, particularly for women and girls, following both local and national recommendations. Housing are continuing their work around the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance accreditation. Unfortunately, this was delayed due to some staffing changes, but a new coordinator has been appointed and will join the authority shortly. And once that work is completed, we'll move on to our White Ribbon accreditation. Picking up on Councillor Russell's comment earlier about planning, the update provided within the report was provided by the Head of Planning and Policy in direct response to the local plan being amended, where reference has been specifically made to needing to take reference to violence against women and girls. Our deliberative engagement project is well underway with live surveys for adults and young people, and lots of work has been undertaken to provide support to sessions planned early next year, where we will be holding discussions with representative groups in enclaves of women, girls, men and boys. The Safe Maidstone Partnership has created a new action group, which is structured around the themes within our 3-year community safety plan: listen, empower and challenge, with representatives from all sectors within that group to create safe channels for reporting, to support change through collaboration, to tackle harmful behaviours head on. Early actions include proactive operations in the nighttime economy, as you heard from our colleagues from Kent Police, sharing vital resources to support victims, delivery of and sharing of training such as the active bystander training, and campaigns that support the 16 days of activism that started on the 25th of November this year. In summary, we are making steady progress, but we recognise that there is still more to do. Our approach is collaborative, evidence-based, and will be rooted in lived experiences of our community. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Kahili.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Martin. Just a quick question on the practical sessions like the active bystander. Is that going to be available for anybody that's interested? I know Councillor Jeffrey went on one the other day. He said about that. Something that came up on one of the posts about VOG. I don't know if it was one I posted sharing the survey. One of the residents of Maidstone, I think he posts on everything. said that in a different borough, there's more practical sessions and training for people who that wasn't so much the active bystander, it was what to do when it happens and involving people more than the enclaves. Is it just the enclaves, or is there going to be more sort of involving men and women as well? How to say no, how to encourage people if somebody says something, which is the active bystander, but also is there self-defense, is there what to do in a tricky situation for people to take themselves out of, because those are the sort of things. Is that what's coming up in the Borg thing? Because I heard about this on the VSC. I can't remember what it stands for. The one that Nicola does. It's NBC, and I saw the slides and that on a volunteer group thing before I'd heard about it from NBC itself, which seemed a bit bizarre. So I just wondered what else there's going to be. Thank you.
Yeah, the voluntary sector. Yeah. So in regards to active bystander, I met with my line manager this afternoon, and we've agreed that I will provide an active bystander training session specifically for members. So that will be coming soon, hopefully via my colleagues in Democratic Services. I'm welcome to see you all there. So far, active bystander, for those that aren't aware, is a early intervention technique. It looks at using the 5 Ds of intervention, so direct, indirect, delay, and I forget them, which is terrible because I'm the trainer. You caught me on the off guard, apologies. So those sessions were derived from a company called Cultivating Minds, who introduced them. The officer that created, or the gentleman that created them, was a police officer serving in Glasgow when Glasgow was regarded as quite a violent town, and he was looking for opportunities to engage the community themselves in motion. Basically, that's how he phrased it. And as a result, the active bystander training package was developed, and through the Kent Violence Reduction Unit, primarily looking at violent crime and under 25s, not specifically violence against women and girls, largely more around knife crime, but with lots of opportunities to use it in different spaces, provided the opportunity for us to be trained. So myself and colleagues in other Kent departments were trained, and so far personally I've delivered training to South East Railway staff, colleagues at KCC wardens, all the town centre security officers, the street ambassadors, police officers, various. You might often, just for members' clarity, you will sometimes hear the police refer to as upstander training, because they want the community to be upstanders. It's essentially the same principle. It's just that they wanted it branded in a slightly different way, which is their choice. In terms of that wider education piece, we have looked at those in the past through the Inspector Kent mentioned the pop-up CCTV trailer, which I implore you, if you haven't been that way, pop down Gabriel's Hill on your way back out. It's up at the moment outside one of the nightclubs. Actually, I was there when it was being put up recently, and we had several groups of women come up to us and thank us for deploying it, because of the feeling of safety that it creates just by being there, which is lovely. We use Safer Streets funding to purchase that. Through that, we looked at initiatives like self-defense, Krav Maga, empowerment sessions, and the uptake was really poor, even from those working within this. So we know there's work to be done in terms of connecting with people and educating. I'll leave some of these on the side. We have the officers have been working with One Maidstone and the ambassadors to create, so this is their Stay Safe This Festive Season leaflet, which has got some information on there. You've seen some of the control tools, so taking the point about some of the focus is obviously about women and girls looking after themselves, but there is a responsibility for boys and men to play their role as well. So those I've given to a few already. There are some few more if you want to take them home for your loved ones and partners. Are screaming ladybirds. They are essentially panic alarms. They're designed to create startled your attacker, and then give you opportunity to break away. Bystander will tell you that the likelihood of somebody coming to your aid is fairly low, but that's why we're trying to train people to be more active in their bystander behaviour. Does that answer all your questions?
Yes, thank you. I was just wondering if the bystander training for everybody would be out to anybody in the community. Is there plans for it to go out to church groups, community groups, scouts, schools, and so on and so forth? Thank you.
That was also discussed this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I can't see anybody else indicating, so this report was for noting. So is that noted? Lovely. Thank you very much. I now declare this meeting closed. Thanks everyone for that. I'm going to just take a 10-minute comfort break, so we'll be back at 5 to 8 for the next meeting. Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Claudine Russell, Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. Meeting is going to be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anybody else be recording the meeting? Look to Councillor Mackay, yes. And again, fire alarm, don't worry, Democratic Services will assist. Item number 1 on this agenda is apologies. So as per the last meeting, apologies have been received from Councillors Houlihan and Oliver. Item 2, we don't have any substitutes. Item 3, we've got one urgent update, which is our usual one, which is our brand new Cabinet Forward Plan with the highlights. That is on your tables. So when we get to that, we'll be looking at this one, not the one in your agenda pack. Is that agreed? Item 4, I can't see. Oh, no. We have 3 visiting members, which are online, and they are 2. Councillor Reardon and Councillor Fort. Councillor Reardon, first of all, could I ask what item you'd be speaking on?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm here for the Midway Street car park item.
Thank you. And because you were one of the members that called that in, you're able to participate in that as if you were sitting on the committee, but you don't have any rights to vote. So you don't necessarily need to do the start visiting member bit, if that makes sense. And Councillor Fort?
The same item.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, so that takes us to item 5. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? Can't see anybody indicating. Item 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Again, can't see anybody. Item 7, I move all items be taken in public unless any member wishes to refer to your exempt appendix, which is on relating to item 7, the receipt of the call-in part redevelopment of Medway Street pay and display paid car park, in which case we'll have to move the committee into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified on the papers, having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed? Item 8 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of November, pages 1 to 4 on your agenda pack. Are there any comments on the accuracy of those minutes? Can't see anybody indicating, so I move that the minutes of the meeting held on 12th of November 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Item 9, we haven't got any petitions. Item 10, we haven't got any questions from local residents. Item 11, we haven't got any questions from members. That takes us to item 12 of this evening's agenda, which is our Cabinet Forward Plan, your urgent update on your desks. A reminder that any item that's been greyed is too late for pre-decision scrutiny for this committee. And any item in yellow is brand new to the plan. So have a quick look through and let me know if there are any items the committee would like to conduct pre-decision scrutiny on. Councillor Harper, we'll start with you.
I just was think there on page 8 and 9. Obviously, if tonight we agree to go ahead with the review in terms of the housing review and so on, I would think perhaps then we should be looking at for pre-scrutiny on the spatial planning advice. Oh, sorry, on the temporary accommodation plan and empty homes plan, because they link into the whole issue around accommodation and temporary accommodation. And separately, I wondered if we might want to call in the spatial planning advisory group, because if it's looking at, well, it depends really what it was recommending. If it's recommending that there's a subset of the council to take part in the local plan, then I think that may be something we would wish to consider in terms of whether we think that's a good way forward or not. But obviously, until we get the report, which won't be published until the new year, it's very difficult to say. But I would think if we do proceed with housing, and on our previous work we've done on housing, perhaps pre-decision scrutiny on the temporary accommodation plan and empty homes policy might make sense.
With regard to the item on the spatial planning advisory group, I mean, as far as I can see from what we've got in front of us, that's just an agreement to set up a working group. So I'm not sure there would be any pre-decision scrutiny to conduct here as such. I would think that was more, if you were minded to, you could go to that meeting as a visiting member and speak on that item before they do it, because I'm assuming that is just, we want to set this up, what will the membership be like? It's not that we could add anything to that particular item. So I'm not sure about that one. The temporary accommodation plan and empty homes policy, I'm open to that, but see what rest of the committee thinks on it, really. Sorry, just been advised we already have the empty homes policy coming anyway. So we've got that one. So it would just be the temporary accommodation plan, if anyone was minded to have that for pre-decision scrutiny. Councillor Phil.
Sorry, Chair. Could I have some clarity just on chain events? So this is expected to go to Cabinet at the end of January. It goes to the relevant pack on the 13th. Forgive me, I can't remember my diary off the top of my head. When would it therefore go to overview and scrutiny if we were to call it in?
Yeah, so pack on the 13th of January. If we called it in, that would be the 14th of January to overview and scrutiny, and then it bounces to Cabinet on the 28th of January for the decision.
I mean, it just strikes me that it's a very concertina timescale. It is going to a pack, and I suppose I'd ask officers, is this just a revision of an existing document? Which, if it's going to a policy advisory committee, I wonder whether it's likely, if it is, to throw up a meaningful change worthy of pre-decision scrutiny. My experience is that these revisions often don't, unless there's been a change to legislation or regulation in the period.
I mean, we are on the overview and scrutiny committee, so we can call things in for pre-decision scrutiny if we feel we were to add value. What it does do, though, is obviously it does generally add to the timeline, so we do have to be cognizant of that, because especially when we're on a short window. But what I would do is ask Chief Exec Alison Broom if you would just mind commenting, is that an annual refresh? Is that a brand new plan? Can we have a little bit more detail? Or John Littlemore, just so that we get a bit more of an idea before we think about it. Thank you, John. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a response to improving conditions that we're experiencing in terms of the numbers going into temporary accommodation. So I think we had a plan to buy X number of properties, a certain size and type, well, range, and this is really reviewing that original plan in the current environment that we're working and adjusting it accordingly.
Thank you. I mean, personally, I'm feeling if that's going to the pack and then to the Cabinet, I'm not sure that we'll be having expert knowledge. The officers' expert knowledge are going to go to those two places anyway. So I'm not really sure it's anything that we could improve as a decision. You know, I don't think that will, what we would say would necessarily change the whole plan that the Cabinet would be looking at. So on that one, I'm not minded to have a look at that particularly. I can't see anybody else indicating. So on the basis that we're having the empty homes policy anyway, coming to have a look at, are we agreed to note the forward plan and move on to the next item? Is that noted? Okay, that takes us on to item 13, which is our committee work programme, which is on pages 17 to 18 of our agenda packs. So we've got our current item that we're looking at, which is the understanding the level of trust between the council and the public. And then on page 18, we've got the different items that come anyway, or we've asked to come on a rolling basis to overview and scrutiny. So you can see what we've got coming up is, well, tonight we've got the fees and charges, but we will have capital programme, the empty homes policy, and then we asked for the Archbishop's Palace update. So on that basis, I move that our work programme be noted. Is that agreed? And that takes us to item 14, which is hopefully our new topic that we're going to look at. So in June 2025, this committee voted for topics that we would look at for further work in the upcoming year. We've completed 2 reviews and we've got 1 ongoing. So we're at a time where we could start a new review topic. So on the basis of the scoring that we did earlier in the year, the next most popular scope was to have a look at prevention and early intervention to manage service demands in housing. So I open it to the committee to see if you'd be minded to start that review. Can't see anyone indicating.
Could someone explain to me the benefits of doing this review? Because I'm not particularly clear. I can see it's really going to add a great deal of value.
I think it's actually quite timely, given that we've just had the new AWAB's law in. So to start to have a look at some of the condition of our housing across the borough, I think would be particularly timely. But I might actually pass that over to Alison, who helped us do the scope in the first place, to have a little bit more detail before maybe we vote to move on to it or not.
Thank you very much. So I think you've identified get closer. Thank you very much. So just to repeat what I said earlier, Councillor Russell has identified 1 key reason why this might be of interest to you. So a change in the law, and as a result, we'll need to consider how we may better respond in terms of housing condition in the borough. I think also we've paid a lot of attention in the past to 2 other key areas in terms of housing: having enough housing, and also early intervention and prevention of homelessness. I think it'd be timely to consider how we might use the powers here and the data that we have in order to take an early intervention and prevention approach in terms of housing condition as well. Because that, you know, it's an old adage, isn't it, that prevention is better than cure. I think to get us to that position, it would be helpful to have debate, bring in experts, witnesses, and perhaps research what has been done well in other places. We'll need to do that anyway, but having your participation, I think, would add a lot of value, because you come with a particular lens and perspective in terms of the interaction with the public. So that's the reason that was discussed at the workshop. If on balance you don't think it's a good use of your time, then you can move on and consider your next highest scoring priority.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Councillor Harper, come back.
Yeah, looking at on page 25, when we're saying the type of research needed to be done to sort of take this forward and actually come out with anything useful at the end of it, there's a couple of references to housing stock condition, but I'm not aware that we know out of the 60,000 houses in the borough what the condition are of each of them. I mean, we would only know the condition of the houses we own, or if Golding owns or any housing association tells us the condition of their properties, or when residents contact us, as I've had today, about the issue of black mould in a house, which I'm about to email on to John. So I'm just thinking, how do we actually get that critical sort of knowledge where, let's I'm missing something. It's not information the council would hold.
So you're right to say that we don't have complete information. Over time, there has been a change in requirement and funding for doing stock condition surveys. So we have to turn our minds to other ways in which we can predict or identify properties at risk of being in poor condition. We don't do that at the moment. I think it's worth us considering ways in which we might use the information that we do have in order to do that proactive work as opposed to waiting for people to approach us. You know, we've learned from the homelessness prevention that it costs more for the household, the resident, and for us if we're intervening once people have got to a point where they've approached us. So if we can, I'm not saying we can, but if we can use the data we have in an intelligent way to try and do that outreach, I think perhaps that would be helpful. It would help with prevention. It may, and this might be a little bit optimistic, also allow us to do some collaboration with our colleagues in primary care for people who they are engaging with who have respiratory conditions, for example, that may be being exacerbated by the housing condition. So we can share and collaborate on the data there. Now, we have made some efforts to do that. We think we need to do more, and it's been quite hard to persuade that sharing of data to happen. So I suppose part of my ulterior motive is to get some political heft behind those sorts of initiatives.
Withdraw my objection. It now sounds quite, I mean, I can see the logic of what Alison is trying to achieve. So I would quite happily propose that I'll move that we proceed with this.
I think if not us, through the chair, if not us, then who? I mean, we are the housing authority, and I think also it's not wrong to start with a problem that you don't necessarily know the scale of, because some of the work is in finding out the scale, isn't it? And then also doing, you know, taking it into smaller pieces of information, and then you can build a picture going forward, can't you? So it looks like we are minded to take this forward, but I will take the people that I've got on my list. So that's Councillor Keeley, Councillor Mackay, Councillor Cook, and then Councillor Higson. That's it. Then we're going to vote on whether to take this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, for those of you, I'm sure you all know what our law is, but it only came in at the end of October, and it's the little boy he died, didn't he, due to, well, it was to do with his conditions he had that was exacerbated by the mould in his flat that he lived with his mother. I did wonder if we could, something that Alison just said about the data we have, could we use the data you have? And you know, when you do the deposit schemes, and they have to reach a certain energy efficient level for you to be able to do those deposit schemes. So when somebody wants to rent somewhere, we lend them the deposit scheme. And if they don't reach a certain criteria, we say no. Am I correct, John? Yeah, so those that we say no to, have we got a figure of how many we say no to because they've got really shoddy central heating, they've got really shoddy windows, there's mould, because you inspect those, don't you? So one of your, well, not you, but John goes out, but they are looked at, and if they're not good enough, they are rejected. So that was a source of data that we could use. And I can think of several housing associations, which I won't name, that I myself have had several calls about with different people. I'm not going to name them here, but I guess as councillors, several of us will have had that information, inviting, you know, obviously I can think of 3 off the top of my head right now, so that's 3 this year. I know John can think of one of those that I'm thinking about as well, but that was a private landlord. But we've got that information in our casework that we can anonymise and bring to you, and also ask them to comment and ask them if they would be honest about how many people they claim to have. And I also think we really need to, there needs to be, as much as it's desk-based research, which we've got to do a lot of, I think we need to perhaps go and have a look at some of these really awful places so that we can actually visualise what we're talking about, not just it's a really rubbish place. I really swore then, sorry. It's a really rubbish place. We need to go and see where it is black with mould, and I can think of furniture that's been ruined, flooring that's had to be pulled up in some of the residents' homes. So sorry, it's something I'm quite passionate about, so I'm definitely up for it. Thank you.
I think that was an absolutely fantastic contribution, and yes to all of that. Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. Two simple questions. We're being asked to look at a proposal. What's the budget for this? It's going to cost us money, isn't it? What is the budget?
Just to provide a bit of clarity around this, so Awad's law is in place now for social housing providers, so registered providers like local authorities and housing associations. What the Renters' Right Act does is enable that to be rolled out to the private rented sector. The government has said it's going to use 2026 to consult with the private rented sector before bringing in those standards and before bringing in decent homes standard to the private rented sector. So I think it's an opportunity for us to engage with government and with our private rented sector about what that looks like. So we have an influence and shape that. In terms of budget, you're right. And once upon a time, there was a whole industry that used to support doing those surveys. All the local housing authorities would go to professionals and they would do a physical sample survey of properties in your area and extrapolate that information out. That's probably not the way to do it anymore. There might be an argument for using drones and all sorts now, all sorts of AI to help us. So it doesn't necessarily have to be costly, is what I'm trying to say. And we're already putting in place our plans around how we're going to deliver the Renters' Rights Act. Some of that is being provided from government additional burdens funding, so we are getting that, and we're investing that wisely to make sure that we can do the enforcement we need to do, but also plan around these other things so that we're ready when it is rolled out across the whole housing sector.
Took you a long time to say you don't know. I mean, one small paragraph in here mentions possible participants. It includes technology experts, partners, advisors. Now, in my experience, you know, when you plan to do something and you've got to be able to do it. I'm not trying to stop you doing it, but you must have some idea what it's going to cost you. You can't just come to a committee and say, we want to do a report. What's it going to be, 10,000, 50?
Wait
200?
1 second. We, as Overview and Scrutiny, we do the work. So we don't have a budget as Overview and Scrutiny, but we give it time and we do the projects and do the work. Where the work goes from then would be recommendations to Cabinet. That's where we sit in this space.
Well, I think it's crazy that you come forward with a proposal and no one's got any idea what it's going to cost. But anyway, I'll move on. Second question. Page 24. Maidstone Borough Council has made significant progress concerning prevention of homelessness and invested in to improve the local supply of social rented housing. What is the current housing waiting list at Maidstone? If I presented as homeless and was accepted, when would I be expected to be offered a home?
I think we're in danger.
I do. So can I be free to ask the question?
I think we're in danger of launching into the review before we've decided if we want to launch into the review at some point. But okay. If we know that figure off the top of our head, but I do believe you've got to meet certain criteria. There's different sections for the bits that you need. I know that service leavers, service personnel are in a separate section. So I actually don't think it's actually a really straightforward answer, because I know that people with disabilities go into a separate section for allocation. I mean, we can give a figure, but I just don't think that actually reflects the complexity of how the housing gets allocated. But I mean, I don't want to answer for
maybe Mr. Littlemore might be the person to answer the question. I did ask him.
there are roughly about 1,600 applicants on the housing register, not all of whom will be homeless at any one time. Currently, we have around 220 households in temporary accommodation, which is the lowest it's been for quite some time. The average waiting time depends on the type of property that the household needs. So 2-bedroom properties are moving much more quickly, between 6 to 12 months. 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms can be on the housing register up to 3-4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Little.
Right, I've got 2 more speakers. I've got Councillor Cook and Councillor Hickson. Can we confine it to whether we want to take this forward or not, rather than getting into the actual review tonight? Councillor Cook.
I was merely going to say, Madam Chairman, that we had a debate on the merits of the proposal before, which we voted on. This is the next one on the list that we voted in favour of doing, and all I've heard this evening is reasons why we should actually progress with it, rather than getting into the debate and rehearsing yet again the merits of whether this is a good thing to do or not. If it's not a good thing to do, then somebody needs to bring forth an alternative. I happen to think this is a very good thing to do. I also think, like you, Madam Chairman, that it's a very timely opportunity to undertake this work, and I welcome us as and would welcome us as a committee making a positive step and stating this is what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. To finish, Councillor Hickson.
Thank you very much. I come from the perspective of actually being a licensed landlord for another local authority, and I inspect my properties every 3 months, so I can see whether or not there's any issues. There are some estate agents that do it every month, so it would be better for this committee if we had a more fuller picture of the data. So if we did something like that, is that something that we could do in advance of us taking this on?
We have data on where we're notified that there are difficulties and we take interventions. So our housing standards team holds data that we provide to government around those interventions, damp and mould, those sorts of issues. So it'll give you part of the picture. I think the discussion has been about how can we improve our intelligence and gathering around that. Thank you.
Right, so so I propose that we do take this review forward. Is there a seconder? Councillor Keeley, I see you indicating. And I would also add to my proposal that we hold this as a working group, that how we've done our previous reviews, but that any member of the committee is invited to those working groups. So I think that's worked well previously. It means we get a few more people on the call. And I would also add that we have the quorum at 3. Because when we add the whole committee, it means the quorum goes up, which we have struggled with in the past. So I think if we keep the quorum at 3 to hold the working group, and we hold the working group, any member of this committee can join the working group, and then obviously, like before, we will bring anything back to the committee for noting and decision taking going forward. So that is my proposal. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That will be our next topic after we finish the one we're on. That takes us to item 15, which is our second quarter finance update report, pages 27 to 64 of your agenda pack. And we'll have this report introduced by Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources, Councillor Summersgill. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This report sets out the 2025-26 financial performance position for the services reporting into the policy advisory committees as at the end of 30th of September for quarter 2. I just remind members that the council produced a balanced budget for 2025-26 for both revenue and capital. The council's overall position is that the projected year outturn position at this stage is an underspend of £197,000, improving the first quarter's expectation of a break even. In areas where we have control over the cost of services and income, is lower than budgeted, the approach will be to ensure that these services must not put financial pressure on other areas. There are other areas where we have limited ability to impact costs of the service, such as temporary accommodation, where costs are driven by external factors. Such pressures will have to be managed within the overall budget. There are currently no planned uses of reserves to support this in-year budget position, but this will be assessed at Q3 when we have a clearer position. And there are no required drawdowns from the general fund balance to balance the financial position in 2025-26. So we're still able to maintain the £4 million minimum level agreed by full council in February 2025. I would pass to Mark Green if there's any more distinct points to make.
Thank you. I have nothing to add to that. Councillor Summersgill and I will be happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Mackay to kick us off.
As always, Mr. Green, you deliver some good news at the end of the year, generally speaking. In 2 or 3 years' time, we're likely to merge with 3 other authorities to make a unitary single one. That is a proposal. That doesn't mean to say it will happen, but that's a proposal. You must keep an eye on what their financial positions are. Are the other 3 authorities we're merging with, generally speaking, as prudent as we are? Or is there anyone with a basket case, shall we say, or heading that way?
I mean, the way you've expressed it is in quite qualitative terms. I think it's fair to say that all of the 3 other authorities in the proposed West Kent area hold a comfortable level of reserves. None of them have had audit qualifications in recent years. So yes, I think you could say that they're all in a sound financial position.
That's excellent news. We're joining the A team, are we?
Councillor Harper.
That's the good side. The downside clearly is that the vast bulk of the money in any new unitary will be from Kent County Council with the problems around SEN, children's and adult services, which aren't in particularly great shapes. So overall, the new unitary isn't going to be in that good a condition, I would imagine. But turning back to this, there's a number of things in terms of your variances, and I know I've mentioned it to Mark and to Mike previously, but for the benefit of this committee, I just pick out 3 on revenue, which are probably the big drivers and to think about for next year. So we've got the Archbishop's Palace, which is currently unlet, which the capital works on it are planned to start next year. So we're unlikely to get a full year's worth of income in next year. So we need to reflect that, I would hope, in the budget for next year. Similarly, on temporary accommodation, it's timely since we've just agreed to start to do more work on that. But every year we bust the budget. And I did say at this committee, I think, a year ago, in February, when we looked at the budget, that had we allowed enough for temporary home accommodation, and I was assured that we wouldn't exceed the budget and that it was all wrapped up. And here again, we have exceeded it. It's happened every year for the last 12 years. I think I've been on this council. Each year it's worse than we expected. Just outside pressures going on in society. So we just need to be cognizant when we do set next year's budget to take this into account, because we've been lucky this year when we look on page 42 that we've had £500,000 of additional interest, and that's what's bailed us out with the things like homeless budget. Now, that money, which is interest earned on our cash, has only come about because we haven't spent our capital budget. We've slipped on capital by £14.5 million, and therefore we're earning a lot of interest on money we've got in the bank. If next year we actually spend that, and I know I've had discussions with Mike, that money won't be generating interest because it'll be being spent on projects. So therefore, if we end up in another year's time with homelessness going up, things like Lock Meadow and so on coming through, and we're actually spending our capital as we need to do, because after next October, we won't be able to embark into any new capital schemes with Section 24 notices being placed on us. That £500,000, which has bailed us out this year, won't be available. So I just want to make sure that the Cabinet, in terms of looking at next year's budget, taken on board these points, so that we're not sitting there in a year's time facing another looming crisis or a housing budget, issues around Lock Meadow, the things which have come up year on year, but we don't have this interest because we've used some of that cash.
Want to come back on some of those, Councillor Summersgill?
Yes, thank you. 10 hours ago, we were looking at the new budget, and with exactly those thoughts in mind, having been said at PAX earlier this month. We have looked at that, and it is the first time I've been looking at it, and I have been asking to take it into account. But lessons learnt from more experience. Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see anybody else indicating. So, oh, sorry, I missed you. I'm sorry, Councillor Mackay.
Big pardon. Sorry. The Archbishop's Palace this year was an overspend of £170,000, and we're budgeting, I understand, for more work budgeting in the next financial year. Sorry, I missed. How much are we budgeting for it? What are we going to do to the Archbishop's Palace to make it? I presume we're trying to bring it to a situation where we can either lease it, rent it, sell it. So, my concern is, a tad of concern is that we will spend a lot of money on doing something to the Archbishop's Palace that the new owner, custodian, might not want it done. Or we've got someone in mind lined up.
Sorry, over to you, Mark.
Yes, I can assure you, Councillor Mackay, that following a decision by Cabinet last year, we have identified a tenant for the Archbishop's Palace, and we have an agreement for lease in place with them. You're absolutely right. We wouldn't embark on capital expenditure without that assurance. So it's similar to any commercial landlord doing fitting out work before a tenant moves in. We're doing the capital investment now that we have a tenant lined up, and over the course of the lease, the rental income that we get will make that capital investment worthwhile. The reason that we have an overspend for 25-26 is that we were expecting to have made more progress by this stage, but we haven't generated any rent in this year, and we won't, because the works will take place next year and it won't start generating rent until late in 26, best case. And so that's the reason we've got an overspend for this year, and we have factored into the budget, or we propose to factor into the budget for 26-27, the fact that for most of that year we won't be generating rent. So it's taken time, but there is a plan for investing and generating a return ultimately from the palace.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, I hope we're being generous with our estimate. Building costs have a tendency to increase, and the older the property, the more surprises one is likely to get. But I'm glad we've got a plan to, and someone in mind, and we're not speculatively. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to remind committee that we have got the update coming that we've asked for. That'll be at the end of this year, so we can monitor that Points well made. Councillor Cook.
Just very briefly, Madam Chairman, obviously what we're looking at here is really the projected outturn for the year. I look forward to seeing Cabinet's ideas for the budget when that time arises, which of course will present, because it has to, a balanced picture, because you can't actually present anything other than, you're not allowed to. With all budgets, there are swings and roundabouts, and what we're seeing here is a little bit that's swinging in our favour in terms of there being a little bit of a surplus. Presumably, that will go into reserve for the future. But is there any? I mean, if there is an out at the outturn of this is to an underspend, that underspend would go into reserve, presumably.
I believe that's the choice. I know in previous years that we've put the money into the Housing Investment Fund, but I think that's a choice that would have to be made. So I'm not sure I could answer that tonight. Yeah, in due course, yeah. So I can't see anybody else indicating, so that item was for noting. So is that noted? Lovely, thank you very much. That takes us on to item 16, which is the fees and charges 2026-27, pages 65 to 113 of your agenda pack this evening. And this report will be introduced by Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources, Councillor Summersgill. Over to you.
Thank you again. This report sets out the proposed fees and charges for next year for the services within the remit of this committee. Fees and charges determined are reviewed annually, and this forms part of our budget setting process. If agreed, these changes will come into effect on 1st of April, unless otherwise stated in the report. It also sets out a summary of the changes for the services within all the policy advisory committees. I will note there's an error in the column headings on table 2 on page 72, which seem to be a year out. They do actually refer to the last year's outturn, the estimate for this year, and the budget estimate for the next year, as in table 1. So the headings of table 1 are right, headings of table 2 are not. So really, it's asking for comments on this. And is there anything you wish to make, Mark?
I'll just add that the default position with fees and charges is that we have to cover costs. Costs are rising at around 4% a year. The rate of inflation for the council is actually a bit higher than the CPI because of the high labour element in the council's costs. So when members look at the detail of fees and charges, you'll see that by and large the increases are in the 4 or 5% range. There will be specific circumstances where it's less or more, and we can explain the background to that if necessary, if members have questions.
Thank you. Just a couple of points from me before I open it up. I remembered that when we had our pack, which was the planning pack, we were going to have a look at the family tickets for some of the museum, because the family one wasn't actually cheaper than buying the single ticket. So I think just make sure that point goes forward. And then the only other point from me is that I was parking the other day in King Street, and a lady drove round, parked, went to the parking meter, said, "I'm not paying that," got back in her car and drove out. And I think that's our current prices. So I was a bit disappointed to see the car parking prices going up by 15%. I know you've mentioned that that's because previous years didn't put it up, but I think I've also noticed a brand new car park, it looks like, has opened under the building. It's an NCP. I don't know if that's always been there or if they've just got new signage under the building. I think it's a new one. Yeah, so I was, when you walk from King Street to here, if you look right up the lane now, there's a new NCP under that building with some yellow, I'm just advertising it for everyone now, with some yellow signage, but I just thought, I haven't seen that before. Anyway, under the old post office, yeah. And I just thought, okay, I'm aware that obviously this is a choice. It's not personally a choice that I would have made, and I am worried about how it will affect our residents and mainly the businesses in the town centre going forward. But that's all from me. I will pass over to the floor. I've got Councillor Parfitt and then Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, this came to the climate change pack, so I've already given my views on the parking, which are very much aligned with Councillor Russell's. I don't think that we should, just because we can raise the parking, we should, but I've already passed that feedback back to you, so I'll leave that there. But what I did wonder if you'd managed to find out, Councillor Summerskill, because we also raised the issue of the cremation of babies and how that, did we get the answer? I do apologise, I've been in London all day. What was the answer? Just so perhaps anybody listening can hear it.
Yes, there's no cash outlay for the families concerned. It's at no cost for them. We can recover the money, but we don't charge the families in the first place. So there's no impact for the bereaved families.
I'm really pleased to hear that. Thank you. And I apologise that I've missed that.
Thank you, Councillor Parfitt. Councillor Harper, over to you.
In the first part of my question, which was about the museum charge, what I think might be useful, because that was a useful briefing note we had on that point about the crematorium charges. I just think would be quite useful perhaps for when we get to full council, because the issue clearly of car parking charges is going to be raised, is perhaps if there can be a briefing note made available looking into our car parking charges compared to perhaps the commercial market in Maidstone, and also some thoughts around sort of price inelasticity and so on, of demand. It'd just be good to have a bit of a briefing note so that when we do get to council, all members have that information before them and they can make a more enlightened decision. My concern is otherwise we'll get there and we'll have a discussion without the facts and figures before us, and we might not get the best decision at the end of the day. I was, at the PAC, quite happy with these proposals, but I do feel we just need that briefing note, because that will just hopefully lay at rest some of members' concerns over car parking charges.
Sorry, just consulting with my Democratic Services. Councillor Summerskill, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Just to remind you on car parking charges, this was a decision made last year to raise the parking. The parking charges hadn't been raised since 2019-20, so we were putting them back to what they would have been if they'd been put up by inflation year on year since 2020. So it's not an above inflation increase this year. It was taking the change over 5 years and splitting it between last year and this year. As to the family ticket question from you, yes, I'm still waiting for the answer from that. Any mathematician looking at the data would know it wasn't right, and we're still waiting for an answer on that.
Thank you. I mean, that's an active choice, isn't it? It was an active choice that we made not to put the car parking up, and it's an active choice that you make to redress that situation. That's just the fact of the matter. Councillor Cook and then Councillor Mackay. Councillor Cook first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Sorry, I want to understand the table 1 and the figures that are there in terms of that, and then the descriptive in para 219, which is parking services. We're told that parking services on average are going up, on average are increasing by 15%, which I think is incredibly excessive and will be damaging to businesses in terms of people visiting Maidstone. There will be alternative. There are much easier places to visit and shop where you don't have to pay anything for parking, and whatever percentage you put on nothing, it still stays nothing, funnily enough. And as the chairman has said, an increase of 15% is a political choice, and it's once again, it's anti-motorist.
But the figures don't seem to represent that, because if the figures are going up by 15%, how, and we've got an estimate in 25-26 of 3.9 million, I'll round it off, and the proposed change in income is 236. That's a lot less than 15%. Why isn't that not reflecting the actual numbers? There's obviously a simple explanation to this, that maybe not less, or maybe you're just expecting half the people to not to park anymore. Or so, I mean, that's the question. I mean, the numbers don't seem to reflect the descriptive. Why?
Councillor Summerskill?
Yes, thank you. I mean, the numbers, pay and display is the ones that are going up, and that they don't reflect the whole of the numbers, because there are overnight parking charges and other things. But for a bit more detailed description, from Mark.
Yes, it's exactly as Councillor Summerskill says, that the parking income that we have discretion over is the pay and display, but a substantial part of parking income comes from issuing tickets, where the ticket levels are set by statute, so those won't be going up by inflation in the same way. So that's the reason why it looks as though, well, the percentage is less than 15%, as you've indicated.
So if they get, so yeah, interesting, isn't it? So we're actually more than half of the income that we take, we don't have control over, because if you look at the 15% of what would be, let's round it up to 4 million, it makes it a lot easier, which would be 600,000, a little bit less than that because it's a bit less. And what we're actually getting is an additional 236,000 against what is proposed to be an average. The average doesn't take into account the statutory bits. It's purely our park and display thing. So in terms of that being an average, could we be told what the actual range is in terms of what will be the lower amounts and what will be the upper amount in terms of percentages, please? So what is the highest percentage going to be in terms of park and ride?
Details are in the appendix, Councillor Cook. Yeah.
They're on pages 87, 88, 86, 85, 84.
Okay, let's pick it up from the chair. So yeah, some of the changes that we've got are on the 12-13% you can see. But for example, the moat park, which is always the one I look at, because if you're going to walk your dog up to 6 hours, your current charge is £3. It's going up to £3.40. It's a 13.3% rise. And then they're all listed like that. I think the difficulty that we have with some of these things is if you do an incremental rise year on year, it's just not as noticed as when you do a massive hike. And I think that happens with lots of service industry things. So I think, you know, people are going to notice this change. But like I say, choices. Does that answer you, Councillor Cook? Councillor Mackay?
Whatever the incremental or whatever the headline's going to be, Maidstone Borough Council increases parking charges by 15%. Sometimes I think we're a political organisation. Well, the councillors are, the officers aren't, and they can make sensible recommendations to balance budgets and this sort of thing. But cabinets in this council, we're made up of politicians. And it doesn't look good. It's already been in the papers, I believe, in the KM, 15%. It sounds bordering on, well, silly. Just because you can or ought to doesn't mean to say you should. It doesn't make us look attractive. People, you know, That's it. The headlines is all that matters is the 15%. The explanation behind it, no one wants to know that, and it's forgotten. But you're in the cabinet. It's you. You're going to come up for election. We all are.
Councillor Harper, over to you.
Can I respond? I can only repeat what I said before. We made a decision last year to change the charges by 25%, but over 2 years. We had the publicity last year when we raised them 15%. We'll have the same publicity this year. It's all we've done through it already once. It's nothing new.
Councillor Mackay, like you said, tough it out then. Councillor Harper, over to you.
I think, Malcolm, that's what they're planning to do, clearly. I can see the logic of what you're doing on car parking fees. One thing which will come up in terms of the call over, or the call-in in a minute, over Medway Street car park, is going to be the issue of parking for residents in these flats. And I'm looking on page 84, because I'm just asking, when you look at list, at Cabinet, whatever we decide on the call-in, I would ask you to give consideration to residents who live in places like those projected new flats and elsewhere where they don't have off-street parking. And I know we've reduced the evening car parking season ticket, because I had a chat with the leader on this, to £90 for the year. And I'm just thinking, if you compare that to where we have on-street parking in controlled parking zones, where the charge is only £25 a year for residents, and it's just £90 seems is a lot more. So if you're going to be a resident living in, for instance, at the Medway Street car park, and you want to park your car in the adjacent car park, you'd be forking out £90 a year. Whereas if you're a resident in one of our controlled parking zones, you're only being charged 25 quid a year. And I'm just wondering, when you look at all of this in the round, perhaps just give some consideration to that people who have no choice through our planning decisions shouldn't be being disproportionately charged to use our car parks overnight.
Back on that, Councillor Summerskill.
I'll take that in consideration. It's one small area of parking, but it's not been passed yet, so it's a consideration for it.
Councillor Field, last speaker on this item.
I just wanted to echo the sentiment from Councillor Harper. It seems quite inequitable that we would, by more than threefold, charge the first permit so differently. And I think it needs proper consideration and the numbers to be run properly by Mr. Green's department to satisfy that.
Thank you. I think the comments have been taken on board and we'll go forward. Councillor Summerskill, did you want to come back on that?
No, that's fine. I've taken that on board. I'll pass it on.
Thank you. So that leads us to, that item was for noting. So with those comments that have gone forward, can we agree that that item is noted? Thank you. And then that takes us to item 17, which is the receipt of the call-in park development of Medway Street Pay and Display car park. We'll have the introduction on this in public session by Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness, Councillor Wales, and then I think it would probably be best to go into closed session because we want to look at the detailed figures on this that are in the yellow papers. So with that way forward in mind, is the committee, does the committee agree that we have the introduction in the public session, we move into closed session to discuss the numbers, we come back to public session to record any decision making and round up? Is that agreed? Thank you. So over to you, Councillor Wales, to introduce us.
Can't tell. Oh, that's better. I can't tell what's coming through my hearing aids or not. Thanks. So the part redevelopment of Medway Street car park, which was discussed at PAC and at Cabinet, is based on the use of some empty space behind the car park to put in parking spaces to replace those that will be lost by building 24 homes. So there'll be no loss of parking. The homes will go towards our 1,000 affordable homes. The figures which were presented were based on affordable because that's the way we do it, based on what we expect to get in terms of subsidy from Homes England. If we are able to get more from Homes England, then they will be able to let them at social rent. It depends entirely on the subsidy we get, whether we can afford to build them at social or affordable rent. We won't know until we've actually get the confirmation from Homes England whether it will be affordable or social. But affordable is the starting point. So there'll be no loss of parking, and given the phasing of the build, probably no loss of parking even during the build. So there'll be no loss of income during the time when the properties are being built. As it is council-owned land, there are no costs for purchasing the land. If we were to go elsewhere, we would need to spend about 1.2 million to buy another plot of land to put those 24 houses on, which will then double the subsidy of £50,000 that the council puts into each property. So in terms of value for money, I think this works out as the best solution, not losing money from parking, but also saving money on the purchase of a plot of land. I'll leave it to you to ask the questions, and welcome to Phil Morris, who's there on the screen, who will supply any details.
Thank you. I think the whole thing has been looked at in the wrong basis, because my issue with this is that this is all our land. It's well within our gift to put those extra car parking spaces as we stand now. So the whole proposal has been said that there's no net loss of car parking spaces, but has been completely worked out wrong, because you should have said, well, if we add those car parking spaces in, what is that then worth? And then does the housing scheme make sense? So I feel like we're going forward on completely the wrong premise. It's been introduced completely wrong, because we could put those in tomorrow and we could look at that value of that land with those in and then see, is this a good scheme for the housing? But I think we're going to go into part 2 and have a look at all the detailed figures for this. But before we do that, we've got Philip Morris on the call, and I didn't know if he wanted to do an introduction before we go to part 2. So Philip, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to add as well, obviously, to Councillor Wales's comments that, as he mentioned, obviously, if this doesn't come forwards, then we'd have to find an additional site. It's also worth noting that the site is allocated in the last 2 local plans. Just to reiterate, the proposals that we're bringing about don't lead to any loss in pay and display, as again Councillor Wales clarified. The part redevelopment of the site will provide regeneration benefits to the area, and also obviously the 24 homes that we're intending to deliver will go some way to delivering the 1,000 council homes building target. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to build on that, the policy H1 was allocated in the 2017 local plan, which was the first local plan, and it was allocated for 40 dwellings at a density of 200 dwellings per hectare. So we're not achieving that either. So either do it what the original local plan was in, or don't do it. But I think we need to look at all of these things individually as options, and that's why I just feel we just don't have enough information on this yet. But Councillor Harper, you wanted to speak in the public session before we go to the private, so over to you, and then I've got Councillor Field.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just while we're in public session, when this came up at the Policy Advisory Committee, I was the only person who actually voted against it at that meeting. Everybody else from every other all the political parties all voted in favour of it. And on behalf of my group, I did express some concerns at that point, and we had been planning to do our own calling on this. We did before that send a note or report to the members of the cabinet for when they were considering it, and I've had them referred back to my team some of the outcomes of that. So one of our big concerns was the location within the Medway Street car park of where the flats were going to go. And we had suggested that perhaps they could go on the sort of unutilised part, the lower parts of land. Now, it was explained by the leader that had been looked into at an earlier stage, but that there was a whole load of issues, and I can't remember if it was sewers or various utilities go through there, which would have made it virtually impossible to have built the flats down there, which was would have got them away from the frontage of the site with the impacts of traffic on the main road, which they'll have. So, you know, that answered one point. Another point we raised was the issue of most of these flats are going to be family housing. They're designed for either 4 or 5 person flats. So, I mean, it might be a bit of a stretch, but if it's a 5-person flats, one would imagine it's, for instance, likely to be parents and 3 children or some combination. And therefore, the likelihood is that there will be a lot of people living in these flats with cars, which is why I was asking the question about permit parking and so on. Because if this had been in more in the residential area, you'd pay your 25 quid for your parking permit. Here, if you wish to do a similar thing at night, it's £90. And if we're looking at social housing, which hopefully it will be rather than affordable, we want to make the ability for the residents to park in Medway Street car park as easy as possible. And if they meet the criteria to be in social housing, £90 a year, whilst it might not sound a lot, is quite a considerable figure. So I would ask again, when you look at this, perhaps to consider that point. So those were 2 of the main things, and I think they have been answered. The other thing which we thought was, and I remember going back a couple of years in the previous capital programme, which the previous administration presented, there was a figure for works to Medway Street car park, and I remember drilling down in a Policy and Resources Committee or somewhere to understand what that was. And that was because the plan previously was to build a ramp and actually put car parking down in that lower part of the car park. So I can understand where Claudine and her colleagues are coming from, because that was the original plan prior to this. However, given our local plan wants to build a number of houses there, the whole thing, there's a load of inconsistencies. I do see the benefit of putting affordable housing or social housing here. We've got to put it somewhere. It's fairly central. If we can assess or address the issues around the fact that most of the residents will have at least 1 car, then it, to me, probably makes sense, but I will listen to the debate in private session. I just wanted to pick up those points now while we're in public. Thank you, Chair.
I think the figures that we've only got on the yellow papers are for affordable housing. So if we look to social, we'll be doing the calculations ourselves just to give you to make ourselves cognizant of that. Also, the numbers as I see them, but which we're going to go into, barely stack up on affordable. I can't see how they'd stack up on social unless we got a lot more capital grant or some, but the rents going forwards for the revenue budget, I don't see that they'd stack up at all on social, but we'll have a look at that when we go into closed session. Councillor Field, over to you.
Thank you. I just welcome a little bit of expansion on the assertion that it would, around the cost of an alternative equivalent site in the town centre, just for clarity. The figure's gone completely out of my head now. Was it 1.2 million that was asserted, or was it a bigger number? I can't remember. But whatever it was, The site value, yes. That if we could have a bit more of a detailed explanation, I'd be grateful.
Yeah, so it was 1.2, and that's based on the assumption that previously we've spent around £50,000 for per plot for land. So effectively, if we take the £50,000 times that by 24 units, that would be that's how we get to the 1.2 million. So we're saying that the land costs, because we own the car park ourselves, then to find an alternative site, we'd have to spend £50,000 roughly a plot, and that would equate to 1.2 million to deliver 24 units or homes.
Thanks for the clarification, Mr. Morris. You threw me a little bit because in the chamber you were coming from behind me. I was wondering who it was.
Sorry.
That's good then. Let's just build over all of our car parks. Councillor Parfitt, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to ask what happened, because obviously when we were, our group were in the administration, we asked for that additional parking to be put in. That was a clear directive. And we're 18 months on, and that hasn't happened. And now it is being used to justify putting those houses in that location. Now, obviously, I accept our administration, we chose not to do it. We decided it wasn't worth doing. And obviously a new administration, new rules, and that's fair enough. I've got no problem with that. What I do have a bit of a problem with is that something that on our watch was asked to be done because we believed there was a benefit to having those extra car parking spaces wasn't done. And I also do question how you build 24 houses without causing any disruption to lose parking revenue, unless they're going to come. I mean, David Burton would be absolutely thrilled if they were modern methods of construction houses that just come in by a crane and just plop down, because we had quite a few hours being told how great that was and how he wanted to do it. And so those are my points. Thank you.
Anyone for those? Oh, Phil, sorry.
Yeah, no, I can come in if you wish. I believe that there had been some work that had been undertaken to deliver the area in yellow independently, and then I believe that as far as I understand it, that obviously we were then looking at a broader redevelopment option. So therefore, it was, I believe it was sort of halted at that stage to obviously be part of one application rather than two separate applications. So it was then decided, I believe, to be kind of incorporated into a wider redevelopment scheme. But I believe the option is still there if that's decided by members to go forwards.
Councillor Parfitt, do you want to come back?
Yes, I would, because it still doesn't justify the massive wait, the huge amount of time that's passed by. And also, I won't mention figures here, but I do remember there was an awful lot of pushback to just delivering that car park, because apparently this ramp was going to cost extortionate amounts of money. And now that doesn't seem to be an issue. Thank you.
Councillor Field, over to you.
Just briefly on Councillor Parfitt's specific point, my reading of the papers in terms of the mitigating of the car park loss is that the sequencing of the proposal would be such that the car parking space as yet unused that you're referring to would be made good and brought into use prior to the closure of the 24 car parking spaces required for the proposal. So net, there's no loss of car parking spaces in that instance. Yeah.
I understand that.
Through the chair. But no, that's not the point that Councillor Parfitt was making. The point that Councillor Parfitt was making was that under our administration, we had already asked for that yellow bit to be car parking spaces. So therefore, they should already be in existence. The fact that she was saying that why for whatever reason, they're not in existence, but therefore when you look at the scheme, they should be in existence, and then you should be thinking, is it a good scheme for the housing? That's the issue.
I appreciate
And it's
clarification.
been used the other way round, and that's, I think, the point that Councillor Parfitt was saying. Now it's saying there's no net loss, but there would have been if they were in. Councillor Mark Green, over to you.
Thank you.
So was making the point, which I think what you were saying, because I was saying I find it very hard to believe that there would be no loss. And based on the way it's being put, no, there wouldn't, because it's just a swap over. And I accept, but if you go to Medway Street car park, I mean, it's tiny, it's higgledy-piggledy. It's not even nice to park on now. But so again, I find it very hard to believe that building on that bottom area is not going to have a big impact on the whole car park. But that's just my view. Thank
you. Mark, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I think if I could just expand on what Phil Morris has said, and I hope this clarifies things. The brief, as I recall it from the previous administration, was to create extra parking spaces. The brief that we as officers have had from this administration is a different one. It's to create housing, but within the constraint that we don't want to lose any parking spaces. So I don't think it's really comparing like with like to say that, oh, well, the previous scheme wasn't delivered. Why is this scheme being delivered? Because the brief that officers have been given has been different as between the two administrations.
Thank you. On that basis, I think we're done in the open session. So I think the time is 11 minutes past 9, and I'll move us into closed session so that we can have a look at the figures. And for anyone watching online, we'll come back into public session to do the outcomes of that. Councillor Fort and Councillor Reardon, if you could stick with us, and please use your, and Philip Morris, and please use your hand indicators if you want to speak when we go into this. For the rest of the committee, though, we don't need to use our microphones now, and we'll go into closed session. Thank you. Oh, we'll use mics then, but we'll shut the door. We're going to do that now. fine. You're more than welcome to leave us now. Thank you very much for your input. I'm sorry it's been such a long evening for you.
Thank
and Merry
you.
Christmas.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. It is 9 minutes to 10 and we're back on overview and scrutiny. We've just come out of a closed session. We've had a full discussion into all of the different figures that were in the yellow papers and more. Thank officers for all of their time on this, but we haven't come forward with any other proposals to go forward to Cabinet. So on that basis, the decision made in Cabinet stands. We've got nothing to add to that. And as that was our last item on the agenda, I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you all for your time and very Merry Christmas to everyone.